Hi, friends. Thanks again for joining me on extraordinaryconnection.org. My name is Pastor Scott. I have a question for you today. Are you tired of washing your hands yet? I'd like to think I'm a pretty fastidious person, but I don't ever remember washing my hands as long or as often as I have been over the last few weeks. And we all have Ignaz Semmelweis to thank for it. Ignaz was a Hungarian doctor who worked in Vienna in the 1840s. And at the time, Vienna was one of the centers of the world for teaching and learning medicine. So think the Mayo Clinic and Johns Hopkins and Harvard and Princeton all in one city. And Ignaz worked in the maternity ward. He was an obstetrician, and he had many assistants and students. And he asked himself the question one day, why do some women die during childbirth and others live and thrive? So he examined income, and he noticed it wasn't the poverty-stricken women who were more likely to die in childbirth. It was equal among all income classes. And he noticed it wasn't based on race or age or diet or anything else he could observe. So by chance one day, Ignaz noticed some of his students coming in from their anatomy class and going directly to the maternity ward to deliver babies. See, then, like now, a big part of a doctor's education is anatomy, and the way you learn anatomy is through dissection, which means those students were dissecting cadavers and then running up to the maternity ward to deliver babies without washing their hands. Or they were assisting in a surgery in one room and then going out and delivering babies in the next room without washing their hands. So Ignaz went into the maternity ward and he made a mental note of which beds had just delivered babies. And sure enough, those new deliveries and their mothers who were healthy on entrance to the hospital had a much, much higher mortality rate than they should because those assistants' hands weren't washed. Onto something, Ignaz reversed his theory, and as an experiment, he had all of his students wash their hands before delivering babies for 1 month. And as you know, the mothers and babies were much, much healthier because of it. And infant and maternal death rates went way, way down. So Ignaz was super excited. He called all the other doctors together and said, "You aren't going to believe what I observed." And he told them that when doctors washed their hands, it made their patients healthier. Now, you would hope that the other doctors would have said, "Great work, Ignaz. We're going to start washing our hands right away too." But they didn't. They didn't believe Ignaz. In fact, they were offended at the suggestion. "Gentlemen do not make their patients sick," the doctors replied. Ignaz became more insistent, and he begged and pleaded with the other doctors to just try it. What could it hurt, he reasoned. But the other doctors said no. They'd been doing medicine this way forever. Ignaz must be wrong. Frustrated, angry, and slightly manic, Ignaz was admitted into an insane asylum over his hand-washing message, and he ultimately died there, unbelieved for several years, until another doctor in the United States observed the same thing, and that the medical community finally put two and two together, that washing your hands lowers the risk of infection. Sometimes, like with the doctors listening to Ignaz, we close our hearts and minds off to new ideas and new information. We are certain that we're right because, well, that's the way we've always done it. We're certain our way is the best way because that's the only proper way to do tasks. Sometimes, like the doctor, we get so stuck on our certainty and of our rightness that we close our ears to any disagreement with us. I think we're all guilty of it from time to time. But we do need to consider things from a new perspective, or consider new information, or try something new. And I know that change can be hard, really hard. And sometimes we'll do things even to our own detriment rather than change or admit we might be wrong. It's the human condition. The Pharisees were just as guilty as those Venetian doctors, just as guilty as us when it comes time to change. Almost every interaction between Jesus and the Pharisees followed that particular formula. Jesus did something, the Pharisees bristled because it didn't follow the Hebrew law. Jesus told them why his way was a better way, and then the Pharisees left angry and plotted their revenge. So turn to any passage about the chief priests, the elders, scribes, or Pharisees, and Sadducees, and you'll see that same drama unfold as with Ignaz. So I'd like to read Matthew 12:9-14 as a brief example. Going on from that place, Jesus went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they, the Pharisees, asked him, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath?" And he said to them, "If any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath." Then he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." So he stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the others. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Did you hear the formula play out? They were stuck in their ways. They didn't want to change. They wanted to trap Jesus, and even when he showed them a better way, they still wouldn't listen. Jesus said it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. He introduced a new way for them to consider what it means to follow God, but they couldn't accept it because that's not how they had always done things. Friends, in the past weeks, we have been bombarded by new ideas, by new information, by new routines and safety procedures. From staying at home to the more frequent washing of our hands to forced social distancing at stores and more. The science, the policy, the changes to our social structure have been coming faster and faster at us these last few weeks. How are you responding? Do you take the stance that you know better? Do you bristle at recommendations from our policymakers or scientists and doctors? It may all be overwhelming, but I also pray that you'll try to approach these new ideas, policies, and social changes with an open heart. Prayerfully consider each and every change being asked of you. Don't approach them with a closed heart because that's not the way we've always done things. Don't dismiss policies or new safety measures because change is hard. It is hard. But be mindful that God works through many mediums, including science. And maybe God is working through the policy changes too. So pray for an open heart. Pray for wisdom and discernment. Be open that the way we've always done things might not be the best course of action for the here and now. Look for where Jesus is in each decision, each new change, each new policy. Look for the places and spaces that call us to love in new ways, which might not be the way we've always done things. So I'm off to wash my hands. And until next time, I will see you at extraordinaryconnection.org.